Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Friday, March the 17th, 2023, St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We continue our look at the parable of the wedding banquet in Matthew 22. We're up to verses 11, 12, and 13. If you remember, Jesus told a parable that the kingdom of heaven is compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet, invited a lot of people who didn't show up. So then he went out, invited people off the street, basically. And now we're at the banquet, beginning in verse 11. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?" And he was speechless. And then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So it's all about being properly dressed. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's kind of start talking about this fellow by the name of Bob Goff. He's a well-known lawyer, speaker, and author of some New York Times best-selling books. He founded an organization that was originally called Restore International to find ways to protect children around the world. Well, anyway, he tells the story that he and his friend were once in Washington, D.C. on business, and they were close to the Capitol Hill at midnight. And then they saw a bunch of cars awkwardly parked around the Library of Congress and barricades, so they decided to investigate. And they soon discovered that it was a set for the filming of National Treasure 2, the movie. Well, they set out a plan. They ran back to their hotel, changed from their suits to blue jeans and T-shirts to look like they were part of the film crew. And then they went back, dodged a couple of security guards, ran across a couple of lawns, through some bushes. They finally got to the side entrance where the crew went in and walked right in as if they belonged there, and nobody said a thing, believe it or not. They followed the signs and arrows that said "set" on it, and finally they got to a metal detector with a guard standing by who said, "Where are your crew badges?" "We don't have them," they mumbled, and he mumbled something to his girlfriend about inept crew members and waved them through and yelled at them, "Badges next time." Well, they turned a few corners till they found themselves on the set in the middle of the Library of Congress at 2 a.m. with its millions of books on shelves. They were filming the scene where they were looking for the Presidential Book of Secrets, and after the filming, they began to plan their escape so as not to get caught, when suddenly the stars Nicolas Cage and Diane Kruger rounded the corner without even thinking. Goff and his friend fell into their entourage as if they belonged, and they walked right out without a question being asked, and thereby had another thrilling adventure. A little bit different in that story. They dressed down to get onto the set, but it reminds us of the idea of being properly dressed. And of course, that's the whole thing in Jesus's parable about the man was not properly dressed. Story is told about a little girl who was going to a wedding for the first time, and she whispered to her mother, "Why is the bride all dressed in white?" And her mother replied, "Well, because white is the color of happiness, and today is the happiest day of her life." And the little girl thought about that for a moment. She said, "Well, so why is the groom wearing black?" What we wear matters, particularly at a wedding. When my wife Jeanette and I were planning our wedding, we wanted to have something kind of simple. She was even thinking about reusing and wearing her sister's wedding dress, or if that didn't work out, something very inexpensive. I was just going to maybe buy a suit, and we went home, and it was kind of a whirlwind romance in the sense that I had never met her parents until we were already engaged. And so I went home for the first time to meet her parents, and we opened the door, and her mother was there. First thing she said to me, her future son-in-law, is, "What's this about no tuxedos?" Needless to say, the next morning she went out with Jeanette to look at wedding dresses, and I went with my future father-in-law to pick out tuxedos. What we wear sometimes matters, particularly when it comes to weddings. In this sense, it's not so much the clothes. Owen Borghese writes, "This parable of the wedding garment has something to tell us really about the attitude that we should have in coming to worship. The way we approach anything demonstrates the spirit in which we come. Is it willingly, or do we begrudge this time out of our lives? If we go visit a friend's house, we don't go in our gardening clothes. We know very well that that's not the clothes. It's not the clothes that matter to our friend. It's simply a matter of respect that we present ourselves as neatly as we can. The fact that we prepare ourselves to go there is the way in which we outwardly show our affection, our esteem for our friend. So it is with God's house, he says. This parable has nothing to do with actual clothes in which you wear to go to church. It has everything to do with the spirit in which we go to God's house, he says. Of course, we want to be reasonably clothed out of respect for our Lord, but he's not expecting a fashion parade. What he's looking for is a garment of the mind and the heart. It's to be clothed with expectation, the garment of humility and penitence, and the robe of faith and reverence. It's all too easy to go to God's house without preparation of thought and prayer and self-examination. If I went to my services at church as carefully as I prepared to go to some fancy affair, my worship and my ministry would be richer by far. What we wear matters, not in terms of clothes, but in terms of our faith, in terms of how we live our lives, in terms of the garments that, figuratively, spiritually speaking, we clothe ourselves in. One more day. So looking forward to joining with you to wrap this up tomorrow on Saturday. Again, have a happy St. Patrick's Day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, take care. Bye.